So this is a screen recording of the July anime of 2025. It is typically going to always be noise in the background because there's always noise everywhere, streets, no matter what. Everyone has busy lives and there's nothing you can do about it with regards to noise. So the first thing I'll do is I'll see if I can get through all three of these animes. Now, technically there were 30. Actually more like 25. Wasn't able to get to 30, but there was 25. And 25 of them, four of them were actually good. And the other 20 or so were actually bad. I'm like, how the hell do people pay money? Someone sponsor and pay money for these companies to keep making anime. Now, being talented and able to do a thing is one thing. But people don't watch anime. People don't read comic books. People don't watch movies to see the artwork. They watch it to see the story first and then the artwork thereafter. Because if the story is shit, it won't matter how good the actor is. It won't matter how good the images are. It won't matter how good the sound effects is. Because that's what people are going to remember, the story. So the story is the main component of every infrastructure in anything. It's story. The foundation story, the mid-base story, the layer story. All part of one conduit thing. And people who don't understand that because they just want to build a structure or something that's good, something that works, something that's fine, they don't understand. Just because you could make something and something works, that's not the story. If you're telling a story, the story of a thing, the people who are building the structure aren't the storytellers. They're the people who are making the story fit inside of said structure. Like filling in cement of a builded building or filling in cement of a paved floor. They design the floor. They know the square cubicles of the floor. They know exactly the length of the floor, the width of the floor, or the length and width of the building. They put up the poles. They put up the steel sets. They make sure they get the right equipment, size, everything. They consider wind factor. They consider degradation over time. They consider weathering. They consider weight and structure, especially weight when it comes to buildings. And of course, weight when it comes to floor, the amount of cars that go over floor. All these things are considered, but they're not the story. The story is what fills in those parts of the floor and the walls and everything else in order to support everyone who walks over it, everyone who drives over it, everyone who, even an environment, in consideration to the environment itself, the wearing away. The filling and the longevity of that filling is the story. The structure that just house the story is not the story. The structure that house these things are called the foundation. Your foundation. The story is what's filled into the foundation. The foundation is an empty shell thing. It doesn't have a character. It's like a robot. You then give the robot emotions and make it self-aware or whatever, however it is. Story is king. Otherwise, if you just build a foundation and everything looks pretty, weather effects, sound effects, then it's all empty because it's mundane and it's obvious. It's a thing. So when someone sees an artwork and say, "Oh, you're a great artist compared to this guy whose stuff is shitty," but the guy's stuff who's shitty feels like it has a life to it, like it has a soul to it, because no matter how good you are, the art, you're only a foundation artist. Your stuff has no filling in it. And that's the 20 something anime that I felt that I watched, and it was terrible. So the next three anime, after I got four of those animes, I managed to knock one more down because I realized after the third episode that's not going to last for a long time. And the only three anime I managed to get through all three episodes and got to the fourth episode and say, okay, these three might be potential in the future, is, first I'll state them by name. I'll state them by name first. And this one is called Gachiakuta, the one that I'm looking at right now. And the next one is known as Hell Teacher Nube. And the next one is known as uh, The Day Hikaru Died. That's supposedly going to be my number one. But in all truth, Hell Teacher Nube is my number one. Because there's something about The Day Hikaru Died that rubs me the wrong way. Something kind of perverted about it that rubs me the wrong way. Now, I'm all about, romance and everything, but when you're like trying to go all pervy with a freaking a creature or alien, like nah. But it was a one shot thing that I saw. I'm like, this might turn people off in certain ways, but it was only a one time thing. So I came to a realization that okay, maybe this isn't as good as I think it is, and maybe Hell Teacher might be my number one. But in the context of what the day Hikaru died, how it's fleshed out, how the story is presented, how those filling inside of the foundation are slowly but surely filled in from the beginning, from the moment they start to fill in the cement, start to fill into the structure, to rising of the cement, to the midpoint, to the filling of the entire structure itself. Everything, and then after the cement is set in place, and you know exactly what the story is and what's going on, and everything of the world is set. The only thing that's left thereafter is how to make it stronger and make it go on more in order to enhance the story or fortify it using capacitors and so on and so forth. And I believe The Day Hikaru Died, is much more structured and foundation capacitor type anime rather than Hell Teacher. So I'll start with the third anime, which is Gachikuta, which is the one that I'm looking at right now. And I'll move to Hell Teacher, and then I'll move to The Day Hikaru Died, because they're all three very interesting stories, and none of them are related to each other. One of them is a horror anime, which is The Day Hikaru Died. The other one is like an action type of My Hero Academia, but mixed with Gotcha Crown or something like that, or some other anime. I'm not surely. I don't know. A school type anime, or a group type like Hunter x Hunter mixed with My Hero Academia or something. That's Gachiakuta. And then Hell Teacher Nube is like a classic animation style design artwork, with a new type of telling of ghost stories. So The Day Hikaru Died is more of a monster story, and Hell Teacher Nube is more of a ghost story. But I think they're both monster stories. They can both be considered. The Day Hikaru Died is considered horror, but Hell Teacher Nube is considered like a comedy slash horror. And of course, Gachiakuta is considered an action adventure type story, which has nothing to do with horror. It's just um, action oriented. So this is Gachiakuta. Now I was looking for a romance anime, but they both suck. In fact, they all suck. And then there's one with regards to a girl and a cat, which was interesting, but if you're not into animals, you won't like it. And it's not like it's technically an animal, it's like a creature. And how long can a story go on with a person and an animal before people start to stray away? I already knew where that one was going. So, moving on, I'm going to start the story. And this is the Gachikuta, episode 1. The story of Gachikuta starts, and this is the beginning. And I should just say, my name is Mackie. I do anime, manga, and gaming. And I'll put that right there, then and there. And after that's done, I do this because I feel like doing it, because it's something I do for fun, a nice little relaxation from a stressful day. I do this like once a month. So yeah, now I'm into the first episode of Gachikuta, and I'll move into Hell Teacher, and I'll move into the Day Hikaru Died, which is The Day Hikaru Died is also a Netflix series. So it's the only one amongst these three that's a Netflix series. So the moment Netflix decide to greenlight this anime, or accepted it, means it has to be good to an extent, not great, to an extent that they thought this, out of all animes, should be considered something to be aware of. And I kind of agree with that. With regards to all the Japanese stories, I believe this is the stronger one. The Day Hikaru Died is a strong one. So, Gachiakuta episode 1, image 1, presented right here, is a woman throwing out trash. And she throws trash out, and a standard thing that happens in this world, all trash goes to a certain place, and it's all dumped out. And the people who live in the city all are nice looking people. They wear nice clothing, white clothing, and specifically they wear this stuff, white clothing and clean clothing, so that they could identify themselves as um, model citizens, as they're doing what they're told to do and how to do it, and they're making sure they keep the world clean, keep their water clean, and they're being a pillar of society. However, the society is split into two types. Those who are associated with not keeping everything clean, and those who are. And of course, amongst those people is a specific guy named Rudo. And his whole thing is that who says what is and what isn't, what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, what's worthy to keep and what's trash. If something is fixable, it's not trash. If something is still usable, just because one thing is broken on it doesn't mean the whole thing is broken, so it's not trash. And that's Rudo's mentality. You know, if your button on your remote doesn't work in order to turn the power on, the remote is not completely finished and done with. All the other buttons on the remote works. All you have to do is put on the power of the TV using your finger, and the remote still works with regards to everything else. Now, if nothing on the remote works whatsoever at all, then the remote is useless. So that's his logic with regards to things. Now, what's weird about this world is that the people in this world, the people who are on the clean side of things, see those who are on the dirty side of things as people to shun from. Now, and they have to stay in their own little designated area, where they live in their own little designated area and must follow the law based on their designated area. Those who do not follow such laws, those who dig in garbage cans or commit crimes, are considered criminals, and they are shot on sight, or they're shot and they're arrested. So this is a kind of a very extreme world of a paradise, of a utopia. Like the utopia of this world are fed up with anything that's considered bad. And if you even go into garbage to dig for garbage, these people are going to freaking shoot you for rummaging through trash, because by you rummaging through trash, you're leaving trash on the floor by rummaging through trash, and they don't like that because someone has to clean up after them. So they would rather put a bullet in you rather than to hire someone to clean up after you. So that's the type of future that we're living in. People would rather kill you for fucking with their trash than to actually have someone to do the cleanup thereafter and then arrest you. They would rather put you in the grave than to clean up after you. That's the type of pussy-ass utopia world this is. So Gachiakuta is that world. These people walking about like they're so good, they're so great and everything. But the moment one of these people commit a crime, they're thrown out like the garbage like anyone else. So it's a very imbalanced world. And here you see the stark difference between both worlds. On this side, everything is nice and clean. On this side, everything is considered dirty, because they're trying to show that it's a pretense to show that they're so good and so clean. And everyone who doesn't want to follow the rules and don't want to do what is right, or just want to do what they feel, are put on this side right here. So these are all rule followers. Whatever the government or whatever whoever says this is what you have to do, they do it, even though they know it's not right or certain things aren't right. They prefer to do so rather than to be labeled as unstable or dirty and stuff. So society has totally brainwashed. I don't know how many centuries it's been or how many decades it's been, but these people have been totally brainwashed into saying that this is the way society is. And if you're unclean or dirty, if you're not trying to be a model citizen, you're a piece of shit. So this is kind of like um, how should I say? This is the Ethan Hawke movie with Uma Thurman. Um, I forgot it was something G. Uh, I don't remember. Gattaca. Yeah, there it is. This is a complete Gattaca story. Complete Gattaca story. Where only the perfect people born of perfection and doing things perfect are considered model citizens and have the ability to perform and move forward in life. But this is like an even more extreme form of Gattaca because it's less about talent and it's more about rule following. So it's kind of like Gattaca mixed with Utopia or something. A utopia world of following rules under a strict regime. So it's Gattaca and it's also a utopia of regime. And so we get more context with regards to the character, and this character name is Rudo. He's the main protagonist of the story. He ends up getting burned one day by his father. He doesn't know why he's burned by his father, but his hand kind of turned black. His father burnt his hands black with either some type of black ooze or he just lit his hands on fire. Some real messed up stuff when this guy was a kid. So I don't believe it's actually a fire. I believe it's a type of element that his father put on his son's hands in order to burn his hands. The son doesn't know yet why that happened, but as the story is progressing forward, you start to see things through the cracks. And it starts to show that maybe his father wasn't intentionally a murderer and wasn't intentionally trying to kill him. That his father might have actually tried to protect him by making sure he has the ability to use an ability. I don't know if that's the truth yet because, from the point of view of Rudo, the main protagonist, his father, one, was a murderer and was thrown into a pit where you throw all the trash away and sentenced to death to die in that pit, said pit. Not only for the torturing of his son's hands, but also for killing someone. During this process, Rudo then meets some guy named Regto. And Regto, because he realized Rudo had burned hands and looked deformed, that would look even irregular to even normal people who live amongst the poor areas, not just the rich areas. Definitely not the rich areas. So he built him this gloves in order to hide away the burnt on his hands. And the gloves not only hide the burn on his hands, the gloves actually soothe his hands in some ways so that he doesn't feel the pain. And it's kind of like Regto knew somewhat what, and he never told Rudo what this burn stuff was, but you kind of get the impression that he knew something about it because he made him a glove, and no normal glove would be able to regulate any type of burn on a person's hand unless it's designed to do so. But as you proceed through the anime, you soon realize the gloves does something more than that. The gloves allows the character of Rudo in order to amplify into an ability that's within the glove itself. So I believe that the chemical compound, which is called Anima, which is then show up later into the anime, is a compound that was built through the pit or the place where everyone throws their garbage and stuff. And it developed over time in that area and it's this type of compound that could create things and bring them to life or manifest and enhance things. And it's a strange type of chemical. It's like, it's like if someone decided to go to a certain place where you throw away a lot of garbage or you see a lot of trash and then you find a new disease that's there that just born out of, I guess, the amount of temperature and the amount of garbage and the amount of climatization and the compacts and conglomerate of the floor and the crust and I guess a whole lot of other stuff such as factors as green life all fused together in order to create a new type of disease or element. And in the factor of the anima is not really a disease, it's more like a type of energy source um, that was born through this area or through this pit. And I believe Rudo's father discovered this thing, and that might be the thing that's on his hands, the black stuff that burned his hands. Core anima elements, the core uh, chemicals of that thing itself. And the gloves kind of maybe the gloves amplified him. So Regto gave him the gloves, and his father is the one that burned his hands. So you start to piece things together slowly but surely as the anime itself is presenting these things slowly but surely. It doesn't tell you these things. So one day, Rudo decided to go home and saw that someone in a nice little disguising their face and hoodie and everything, decided to kill Regto, stab him in the chest. Rudo doesn't know who this person is because he's wearing a mask, but Rudo was then framed for the death of his so-called father, or his adopted father, because his original father got tried and sentenced to death for murder. And so he's now being tried and sentenced to death for murder. It seems like someone set him up. And it's very strange to me that his father was sentenced to death and for murder of someone, and then in the same situation, he's now sentenced to death for murder. It's as if someone wants these events to happen and wants them to play out. And this person is obviously a bad guy, because this bad guy is a person who's probably responsible for his father being sentenced to death. If his father wasn't actually a murderer, but if his father was a murderer, then that's a different story. But if his father wasn't actually a murderer, then this could have been the same person that did the same thing to his father. So he's then put in place in front of everyone. Everyone then says, "Oh, you're a murderer," blah blah blah, straight on display like old time hanging and stuff. So instead of them hanging, they just dropped them into the pit. But right before that, he saw the person's face who was wearing the weird mask with the nice little smile and teeth looking at him. It's as if this person wanted him to get caught, wanted him to be framed, and wanted him to fall into the pit. So this person is a bad guy, and this person seems to have a grudge against people who are poor, or people who he suspect are individuals who have potential to be threats to the other side. Maybe he discovered that the anima was within the gloves of the character, or that the father entrusted onto the son some birth hands and stuff. But that was for some time now. So where this guy has been for all that time, from since the kid was burned in the hands to present day when he got much older, is weird. If if Rudo really was a threat, he would have showed up a long time ago. So it has to be in relations to event playing out now. It can't just be with regards to what happened to his hand. It has to be with regards to what happened with the gloves. Something has to do with the gloves. Or maybe events are playing out as you proceed throughout the anime slowly but surely, that they could not have played out in the past before. So moving on from there, we then see Rudo is then thrown into the pit. He falls into the pit. He ends up in the pit, and the pit is a huge landscape going for miles and miles, or from all the way from like a high uphill, like a ridiculously high hill, all the way into a straight pit that falls all the way down, and all the way down is nothing but garbage. And this garbage just piles up there over time, and eventually, over time, the air starts to become so toxic and so bad that no one could survive living in a place like this. Now, what else exists down here is beast, and these are beasts that were formed through the animal that's present within this toxic pig. So this, due to the fact that there's so much garbage down here and so much compounds, whatever elements were formed that created the anima, eventually the anima mixed with the garbage and whatever is down here created these creatures, and these creatures feed on garbage in order to make themselves strong or in order to survive. So the anima, whatever anima is, whatever type of energy anima is specifically tailored towards um, garbage or things related to metal. I believe it's related to metal in some ways because all garbage have some type of metal associated with them, at least in this anime anyway. Um, so moving forward from that, he then sees a giant creature, but then he quickly covered his nose because he realized he's about to die from being poisoned due to the air being so toxic. And eventually he comes across a situation where one of those giant creatures is trying to kill him. He gets pissed off. He grabs an object in order to try to kill it. He ends up killing it here by swinging some type of looking looking metal shed, and his gloves amplify the shed in order to kill the thing. So there's something very odd about his gloves, and there's something quite not normal about it. But I believe it has to do with his hands. And then later on, he discovers he comes across this guy who was walking through the whole trashy place with the gas mask on, and he comes across him lying there, realizing he's about to die because he has a mask on. The stranger then put a mask on his face in order for him to breathe, or to realize he would die. And the stranger, just like Rudo, kind of have this anima ability, but his anima is in association with his umbrella. It's in the form of his umbrella, which turns into spikes at the edge and around the seams and towards the pointed top. So moving forward from that, he ended up killing all the remaining trash beasts, blah blah blah. He then gets off of his giant umbrella because he rides it like you would ride a parachute downwards, or sometimes he used his umbrella like a shooting dart, where he stands on top of it, where he could plummet straight down like a spear, and then he gets off of it like he's was standing on top of it, and then he takes off his mask, and he's introduces himself as Enjin, and his name is Enjin. And Enjin is then saying that how, well, you have anima ability, so I'm going to test you to see your ability, to see how you are. I'm going to throw you towards all these people right here and see what you'll do in association towards your survival. Turns out the people here hates those who are from the top world because they throw out all the toxic garbage that basically pollutes the air down here. So people are living down here in this pit world, and I believe most of these people living down here in the pit world, or those who managed to survive from being condemned here, and they managed to have children down here, or most of these people who are down here were sentenced down here and condemned down here for bullshit, and so they've been surviving down here for so long. So they hate anyone from the upside world. So what's weird is if he was to tell them, which he did tell them, that he was a condemned person thrown down here, they don't seem to give a shit because, well, they don't care about the upside world. They don't care about the people on the poor side, or they don't care about the people on the rich side. So these people might actually have been born down here. They don't have the luxury of being poor people from the up world or rich people from the rich world. So they're less than, these people who are living down here are less than poor people. So they hate everyone who are in the top side world, both poor and rich alike. So, and then they explain to the reason why they hate everyone from the upside world, because the upside world throw all the garbage down here to pollute the air so bad that those pollution eventually create creatures that end up killing human beings and eat up all garbage, and the toxic clouds kill everyone and everything. Eventually, Ruda got sick and tired of this shit. He decided to rip off this guy's fingers, or at least the meat and the skin of his fingers. He ended up, I believe he might have killed some of them, but he didn't kill all of them. So he turned a chain into like a laser whip or something, and eventually he turns a tire iron, not a tire iron, a tire into a giant, because it has metal on it, into some type of spiky object, tire, and then he hits one of them in the head. So Enjin says, okay, you passed. Your ability is strange because typically people who have the ability to use anima, and it's very rare that certain people have this ability, but those who are infused with this, um, because it seems to be some type of either a disease or a thing that's just happened to latch on to someone who's a living host, um, they can they only have one ability to use it, so they could only do one thing with it. It's either for a metal object of a specific type and it stays in relation to that specific type of object. So no one is able to use more than one type of thing. Like say, Rudo could pick up a metal pencil and turn it into something, and then take a tire iron, and then take a crowbar, or take off rims from a car, or even wood 4x4 metal plating. So anything that's made out of metal, he could turn into a weapon. So that's surprising to Enjin. So Enjin eventually calls this guy. Not exactly sure his name. It'll come to me. Um, I think I have it. Yeah, I wrote it down. Uh, let's see. What was his name? Zanka. That was his name. This guy name is Zanka. Yeah. All right. So that was, I believe, the end of the first episode. And introduction to the second episode was when Zanka is first introduced. And he wants Zanka to train Rudo. So moving forward from that into the second episode, you then see Agent talking to Rudo about his abilities, and then explaining what the anima is. And this is the anima. It was developed in the trash world, in the pit world, and explained that it has a specific ability to manifest on anything made out of metal and anything organic. So it has to be organic slash metal. It can't just be pure metal. It has to be have some type of organic compound attached to it. It has to be organic type metal. They are still unaware of what it is or where it came from and how it came into being, but he basically, Edgin basically gave him the runaround, and then he gave him the rundown of what it is. After Rudo asked a couple of times, and then Agent gave some money with regards to him trying to get a place for him to stay, or at least to buy clothes, because he sold his clothes to get medication in order for him to get treatment, because Rudo was severely hurt and also had a lot of toxic in his blood due to staying in the pit for so long. So Rudo fight with the giant monsters, injured his body, and he got bleed. Of course, he get infection, and he was breathing bad toxic air. So he had a lot of bad medical problems going on. So he eventually sold his upworlder clothes, and then got money for it, and then gave him back the money so he could buy new clothes, or at least get a better place to stay, or at least found something that's of interest for him to buy. He then, okay, Rudo then runs down a street after a cat decides to steal his money. I don't know why that happens. Why did the cat steal the money? The only thing that makes sense is that it was intentionally meant for that cat to steal his money. Maybe the cat was hungry. Maybe the cat thought it wasn't money inside there, that it was food inside there. It's just odd to me that that happened to have happened. So I believe that was also, either if that wasn't coincidental, that was intentional. So he runs down this alley, and Zanka was hiding in this alley, probably listening to Ejin and Rudo talk before. Grabbed Zanka's staff. Zanka got in a used Zanka's staff to stop the cat from stealing his money. Eventually, moving forward from that, Zanka then says, "Hey, give me back my staff." They get into some light conflict with regards to each other. Zanka is surprised that he could use any object that he touches as long as it has some type of metal. I don't believe it's fully metal either. I believe this guy could touch any object, regardless if it's metal. So that's the weird part about his abilities. It's never fully stated that it has to be fully metal. It's just that any object he touches can turn into an anima type of gears. I believe he called a specific name that's called for it. Uh, Instruments, something instruments, user instruments, um, something like that. So he used a plunger in order to try to defeat Zanka. Eventually, Zanka realized that there's shit at the end of the plunger, so Zanka starts stressing out because he doesn't want to get the smell of shit on his clothes. So he started to sweat a lot, and she started to cry, and eventually shit got onto his clothes, and eventually he passes out because poop got all over his clothes, and he decided to stop fighting him because once he realized he had poop all over his clothes, he passed out because he had no. This is a funny part. He had no idea, or should I say, Rudo had no idea he was fighting with a plunger, a toilet plunger, the whole time. So once Zanka realized shit is all over his clothes, he lost the will to fight. So moving on from that, we get introduced to our next character, and this is in, I believe, the third episode. Um, Actually, yeah, the fight with Zanka and Rudo are also in the third episode. The fight with Rudo and the giant creatures are in the second episode. So the whole conversation with Rudo um, and Enjin together, in discussion for what the anime is, was part of the third episode, and the fight with Zanka and Rudo was also in the third episode, and him getting put upon him was the third episode. The fight with the giant creatures, kaiju type creatures, that was the second episode. So this is the last image of this, and at the end of the third episode, we get to meet Ryo, or R I. How's it? Rio? Her name is Rio, and she's also an anime user. And these anime users have a specific name they give themselves to a group of people who are able to use anima, and the ability to use anima to turn objects into weapons, instruments, metal instruments. Um, and they're called, this group of people are called givens, or like I'm given a power, a specific power. So they're called givens. Kind of stupid, but I'm going with it for right now because it's about the only thing interesting with regards to this anime, compared to all the others before it. So moving on from that, that was the third episode of this, and it has potential to be better. Um, but other than that, it feels like a Hero My Hero Academia mixed with something like Hunter x Hunter. So who knows if that will survive in the long run. The next anime um, I'm going to introduce is called Hell Teacher Nube. Now, this to me is my personal favorite anime. My number one, because one, it's using a classic anime from back in the 90s anime style, cell style, but at the same time it's using new technology with regards to environment and coloring, and of course from scene to scene transition. So it's using new tech for to enhance the old style art style that's done. So they're doing 90s style art, but they're using 2020 type tech, 2020 to 2025 tech in order to make the anime that they want look better. So this is reminiscent of a Hunter x Hunter classic anime style. And Hell Teacher Nube is about a teacher who's basically defeated a demon and eventually consumed that demon's arm and got that demon's arm, and he was one of the best exorcists in all of Japan until he became the only exorcist in Japan. And eventually he was called upon by a principal of the school because the principal of the school realized that there are a lot of extraordinary events happening around his school and around his town as well. And Nube tends to agree on this and stated not just your school where all the kids go to here, but also the town as well. There seemed to be a rise in paranormal events happening within this area. And of course, unlike the previous anime, Gachikuta, Hell Teacher Nube is kind of a comedy slash horror slash slapsticky type thing. So it's not completely void of its tension and its dread and its blood and guts, but it also has a lot of funny moments and ridiculous, quirky things designed to deviate or to lighten the mood or water down the heavy tones of violence. Now, the only thing I don't like about this anime is that for some reason, someone decides that it's a good idea to for it to be a school where kids are. That the monsters are going to be bothering children, like harassing children. Why they decide to go down the child route, not the teenage route or the adult route like college. I don't know why, but I guess it makes more comedy and more comedy sense for it to be an elementary school because he's trying to be a teacher to teach kids about the paranormal and just to deal with. He is basically hired to deal with paranormal, and he took on the role as a teacher simply to protect the school from the paranormal. He doesn't really want to be a teacher. He's just hired to do so. So he has to be this type of person he doesn't want to be. And that's where the comedy comes in. He has to pretend to be a teacher, but he doesn't know how to be a teacher. It's all children look at him like he's some type of weirdo. So this reminds me of GTO when Great Teacher Onizuka is trying to be a teacher, but he doesn't know how to be a teacher. But he has other skills and abilities that are unrelated to teacher, which comes in handy in the long run. So here we see the character Nube in the shadow doing his whole exorcist thing, and then in the next scene we see the actual name of the classroom, which is 5-3 or 3-5, however you want to say. Um, and then in that classroom, you see characters that are going to show up later on in the anime. And most of the children in this class are of, I believe, 2 or 3 years apart. Some of them are very young, some of them are a bit older. So I believe the oldest might be a third years. Like they're all elementary school kids, and the age difference. So he does look a little bit older, but he could be just like 2 years older than everyone else here. It's just his body is a bit older. So they're all elementary school kids. So he might be 2 years apart. And of course, um, the main characters here are the teacher Nube, and I believe Kyoko, the girl, and I believe his name is, um, what was his name? It wasn't Shuta. Hiroshi. That was his name. His name was Hiroshi. Okay, so the main players in this anime is Nube and his class. I should say it that way. The main player in this anime is Nube and his class of students, because even though Hiroshi and uh, Kyoko are probably the secondary characters of the story, the entire class seem to play a part with regards to this anime. So the first episode of the anime is all about um, Hiroshi, and the second episode is also about Hiroshi. But coming to the third episode, it's not about Hiroshi anymore. It's about the entire class. You would think the third episode would be about Kyoko and stuff, but no. Third episode is about the class itself. So it's a strange type of anime, and you get to think, okay, so it starts off with individualizing the teacher and a student, but then as the anime goes on to the third and fourth episode, you start to realize it has nothing to do with Hiroshi at all. That the story is mostly about Nube, so and the class, not a specific person in the class. So there might be future stories about each individual character or characters in this class. Like this girl, there could be a story about this girl, story about this girl, story about this boy, story about this boy, story about this girl over here that's not seen. And he being the teacher Nube, which is he's horrible at teaching, ends up being kind of a lame-o and seen as a lame-o, and they can't stand they can't stand him. He's trying to put on this front as a good teacher, but they can't deal with the fact that he's such a lame and a weirdo. So, moving on from that, we then see them gather together and say, okay, they're testing his abilities and say, well, if you're such a good exorcist, let's see you exercise our principle, because we believe the picture of our principles, his eyes move every now and again. So they believe that there's a giant picture of the principal in the school, and every now and again they believe the eyes of that principal moves. So here's another character, here's another character, another character, another character, and another character. So these are all students in his school. So later on throughout this anime, I'm pretty sure a lot of events are going to happen with either individuals in the school or certain individuals in the classroom. That's going to play out a lot like Great Teacher Onizuka, but on the side of more scary, because there seem to be ghosts and other paranormal things in here. So during the first episode, Hiroshi decides to take a swing at Nube, and then Nube stopped his fist, and Nube is basically saying to himself, something's going on with this kid. He seems to be overly violent for a child. That's not considered normal. So he believed that the kid might be possessed. Turns out that the kid is possessed. He has a type of demon that's residing inside of him, a worm-type monster, a demon. Eventually, it decides to leave extract from his body, and Hell Teacher Nube decides to show his actual color, his true colors, and decides to deal with this demon. And so his face turns into this like silhouette form of a demon. His hands turn into like this demon form, and that face and that hands are representations of him being able to beat a very powerful demon and possibly entrap said demon within his body. We don't know yet. The anime hasn't shown this completely yet. But all that is known is that he's able to, or should I say the demon is able to extract itself from Hiroshi's body, and finally Nube is able to kill it. It turns into this giant-sized worm type thing. His hands turn into a giant demon hand with claws and everything, and eventually is able to defeat it. And then after defeating it, he destroys it completely. A new guy pops up into the picture, a guy with blonde hair, and he ends up kidnapping Hiroshi for reasons we don't know. We just know he ends up kidnapping Hiroshi. And then it's later discovered in episode 2, he needed Hiroshi because Hiroshi was part of an experiment. So in episode 2 of this anime, we then see him with this a guy who has a blonde hair on top of this type of carnival place, and he rips his face off to reveal who he really is. And in episode 2, there's this huge fight between Nube and the wolf type demon, and this is a wolf type demon, and he's able to split himself into like 4 different characters, so Nube can't tell who's the real him. So they kill Nube fast, but turns out at the end of the story, the MVP is actually kids. They were able to outsmart the monster. Of course, they didn't fully beat him. Nube just stalled in order for them to use a crane, which has a magnetic anvil to it, and it sucks them onto the anvil because the object he duplicated, he's able to duplicate himself perfectly. This demon's able to duplicate himself perfectly, and it sucks the metal that's on this on his duplicate, including the staff and weapon that they were using, onto the magnet and pulling them towards that, which is weird why it pull him, the main bad guy, towards that magnet as well. So maybe it's because they weren't real, it affected them, whereas he is real, it didn't affect him. There's no true explanation to it other than the science and logic of it, which is if their body's that light, because they're not the true form, they'll be able to be pulled away from the main host, which is assumed that they're made of primarily of magnetic forces. And that's what I'm thinking for the reason why they were sucked onto the magnet. That their body is mostly made of magnetic force, so they're able to easily be sucked onto the magnet. So nobody's able to kill him. Duns are done. That's the end of episode 2. We then move into episode 3, which shows a strange guy looking through a window. And the kids are saying that, okay, we don't know who's the strange person in episode 3, but we've been seeing this person at a window looking down from the school for quite some time, for months on end. And we believe it's that the school is haunted not just by the picture, but by certain characters that we might believe are in the school. So Nube is hired to take care of anything that's paranormal. So Nube goes to investigate, and he discovers that the person who's actually in the building that's been looking through the window down at the kids turned out to be a kid as well. But this kid is not just a normal kid. He seems to have like the anime is showing him from the point of view of only half of his face, but the other half seems to be covered for some reason that we don't know until later on after the anime shows it. Like the only reason why the anime is showing one half of his face and the other half is not shown because this is actually a ghost, and this ghost is inhabiting, or should I say, this ghost manifests itself in a form of what it assumes to be a human being. And this is the other side of the half of his body. So this is basically a mannequin that you use in science lab in order to look at the lungs, the heart, intestines, the blood, the eyes, the teeth, the jaw structure, the bone structure, and everything. So all this stuff. It looks creepy, but in reality, that's just a form of how everyone looks underneath their flesh. But in the anime, something like that coming to life would be kind of spooky. So the kids are all freaked out by it, but eventually, Nube's able to exercise it. Or should I say, before Nube's able to exercise it, he then tries to attack the kids by. And see, this is the part of the anime where I'm saying to myself, well, there's something that doesn't feel right about this. Logically, these kids would have been killed a long time ago if we're talking about monsters attacking kids. But maybe it's because Nube's around that these things don't happen. So why, for reasons why they decide to use kids, is not something that I would prefer. I would rather it be teenagers than kids. So why they decide to go with kids, I don't know. So this mannequin type kid tried to kill the kids using a knife and stuff, and I wasn't down with that. I was like, wait a minute, this is as bad as freaking Hikaru, the death of Hikaru, like little perverted sexual thing going on there. So there's always going to be something that rubs you the wrong way when it comes to anime. But thankfully, those things are at a minimum, and here it's the same thing, and that's why I have it in my second place, simply because I'm not about putting kids in danger. Or using kids to like hype up anime because kids sell tickets more. You want to be more protective of kids when they're in danger. I believe that's bullshit, and I believe people who use that are copping out. So that's why it's in second place. But I do like the Onizuka feel of it, that he's teaching kids, because it doesn't feel quite right when you're teaching adults or when you're teaching teenagers. You don't get the same effect of snotty, bratty, immature people that you get with elementary school kids. It feels more alive that way. You know, they could cringe when he acts like an adult and do adult things, like he tried to do dancing and listen to music, and they laugh at him because he's so old and stuff. And that stuff works when the children are very young, or kids are young. It doesn't work that much when they're adults and teenagers. It just comes across as, you know, stupid in certain ways. So it works a lot when they're kids. So there are a lot of good factors of making an anime with regards to protection of kids rather than protection of teenagers. So in that sense, that's why I like it. So moving on from that, he put a seal on the mannequin, or should I say, he put a seal on the spirit, because the spirit is not really a mannequin. It's the spirit of a creature who took the form of a mannequin, entrapped the creature, and then decides to banish it. Turns out it didn't fully banished. It returned later on to give them one final scare, and then it went off to be a real boy. But it was something harmless. It just basically said, well, I'm going to go off and be a real boy right now. Thanks for all your help. Nube is kind of surprised by this, but Nube doesn't stop him or anything because from Nube's point of view, this spirit just wants to be a boy. So eventually he'll find his full body or form his full body, and it's done in a kind of a creepy way, but a creepy way that's laughable for the type of humor it's going. So it's this anime dances on the front of both comedy and horror mixed together, and is done quite nicely. So moving on from that, we get to the third anime, and this third anime is the number one anime on this list. And if it wasn't for that pervy section part of the whole Death of Hikaru stuff with the main character, I believe the main character is either Hikaru or the main character is his friend, his best friend, um, Yoshiki, I believe. His main friend is Yoshiki. If it's, I believe the protagonist of the story is Yoshiki, but I believe the main character of the story is Hikaru. Even though the story is seen from the eyes of Yoshiki, I believe the main character of the story might be Hikaru. But Hikaru is not really alive. So how the story of the death of Hikaru happens is that one day Hikaru goes into the mountain in order to see maybe the site for where his father died. Because surprisingly enough, his father also died in the same mountain where he died, which is very strange because this mountain is known for have a lot of spiritual turbulence. So he went to discover what might have happened to his father. Even though he was warned of not going there, he went there anyway. So Yoshiki went to look for him, and a lot of town people who came from the town also went with Yoshiki to look for Hikaru as well, because they were fearing the worst for him. Turns out their fear were correct. The townfolk went on this whole party search for him along with Yoshiki, discovered later on that um, he's alive. He wasn't dead. However, going back into town, I'd say a year or 2 years later, I believe it might be a year or 2 years later, um, our boy Yoshiki is starting to be very suspicious of the situation. One major reason is that Yoshiki is starting to question the behavior of Hikaru. The normal Hikaru from the past that he knew when he was growing up from a kid, because they're best friends for quite some time, is a person who used to always be a certain way. And after he came down from the mountain, he seemed to start to behave the same way as Hikaru did, but with a lot of different deviations from Hikaru's standard behavior, such as his fear of certain things. He's not afraid of certain things. His fear of eating certain things. He's not afraid of eating certain things. His fear of discovering and traveling. He's not afraid of that either. So there are like three main things that are part of Hikaru's, the original Hikaru who was alive, that he would never do at all. And all of a sudden, he's starting to do it after he came down from the mountain. So our boy Yoshiki's starting to put two and two together. And it took him about a year, and he's been thinking about it for quite some time, And then he came to a full realization if what is stated about that forest or that mountain, whatever's in that mountain is true, then his friend Hikaru probably died at that mountain place. So he then addressed this to the fake Hikaru. And fake Hikaru basically said to him, listen, um, if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to have to kill you. And this huge looking thing came out of his face, the side, like this type of, I don't know what the hell this is. It reminds me of a slug or a mollusk or a snail type of thing. To me, how should I describe it? It reminds me of an ancient enzyme or an ancient byproduct from their anemone. Because if I remember their anemone, the manga I read quite some time, it's an ancient biology from the human race from way, way, way back then before man even stood on his feet full times. You could say they're, I forgot the name that they call it. It's been quite some times, but the biology for it is very specific. It's not, they're not anthropods, they're not Cretaceous creatures, they're not millipedes either. Geez, I wish I didn't remember. Crustaceans? No, it's not that. Uh, the thing that came before anthropods, before any form of anthropods that had a shell, were basically organic compounds that lived in the sea, float in the sea, and eventually form and took shape. So this what this looks like. There's a specific name for it. I'm just missing it. It's not hitting me right now. So the title of the anime then pops up after, at the beginning of the story. Yoshiki's addressed this to Hikaru, fake Hikaru, and Hikaru says, "Listen, if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to kill you." So he decided to keep it quiet. So every now and again, he looks back at fake Hikaru and to keep a secret. They both know the secret, but no one else knows the secret. So the point of view of the story is then told from through the eyes of Yoshiki. Every time we see Yoshiki, he's staring at fake Hikaru. So we're seeing him from a POV of Yoshiki himself, looking around at the world and looking at Yoshiki, like having those old cameras. Like if you were to watch the original Cloverfield, it was done from the camera point of view. That's how it felt like here. And eventually you got to a point where it then transitioned from those point of views into the standard type of film setting or anime setting where everything is seen around and everyone's presented around. And we see a new character here. And I believe this new character is an exorcist. It's not stated what his name is, but he's in these people's home, and to exorcise the type of monster that's here, or spirit that's here, destroy the spirit. He's then called by the company. We don't know the name of the company, but it's called the company, and we're assuming that he's an exorcist working for said company, and he's told to go into this tower where this abnormality is happening, spiritual turbulence, and he said, okay, he's going to go and investigate. He also has this burn, like a curse mark on his neck. I don't know what that is yet. By the third episode, nothing's explained with regards to that. But there are other factors that are present in the story as well, such as, just like Hell Teacher, you have students, but there are many students in this anime, just like in Hell Teacher, and they're all teenagers. So I'm starting to slowly but surely put piece two and two together. If these aren't regular students in the school, like if things aren't going to happen to these students throughout the anime story, because this is a horror anime, then if I'm thinking where I'm going, I might be assuming that even though Hikaru is no longer Hikaru, he is a fake Hikaru, he's a thing Hikaru, there might be other people within this community, in this town, that aren't who they claim to be. Now, she could be who she is, or she could not be who she is. And she could be who she is, or she could not be who she is. Anime seems to be pointing towards certain characters, or certain that are going to pop up later on in the story, certain individuals. And they might be who we say they are, or they might be people who are not who they say they are. I don't know yet. The story hasn't gotten that deep, but they keep focusing on these different people throughout the periods of the first episode. Now, at the end of the first episode, or should I say, coming towards the end of the first episode, we see Hikaru and Yoshiki go down the street, and they're riding down the street, and so Yoshiki finally got the nerve to ask him about what he is, where he came from, and stuff. Honestly, she say he doesn't really know his origins. He just knows he's from the mountain, and he found the original Hikaru dying because he believed that he might have fell from a height and hit his head, or something might have badly happened to him. In order to save the body of Hikaru, he decided to meld with the body of Hikaru. So that's the only thing that he knows, and he tells Yoshiki so far. Now, Yoshiki doesn't fully believe him, and believes that he doesn't know exactly what happened there. he suspects that this fake Hikaru might not be fully telling the truth, because if this thing is pretending to be his own best friend, there's no reason to believe anything someone who's not his friend is trying to tell him. So eventually they come across an old lady who's scared of Hikaru for no reason. It's like the woman has the sixth sense, like she has the Jedi sense, and knows that Hikaru is not completely normal. Right? He doesn't know exactly what he is, but the old woman is scared of him. She runs into her house, and of course, Yoshiki then that same night had a dream about Hikaru dying in the forest. Now, during that same night, someone comes banging on the old woman's door, and this is where the true horror aspect of the story comes into play, because at night, pitch black night, in the woman's own house, someone starts banging on her front door, and with this deep, dreaded voice. We don't know who it is, but we assume that because um, she she ran away from Hikaru, that this person banging on this door, making all this noise, might be Hikaru. But for me, I thought to myself, like, okay, that would be way too easy. Let's say, for instance, we have like a hive mind situation going on here. And if it's not just Hikaru present in this village, that there might be other factors present in this village as well, that comes down from the mountain. Things in association with this fake Hikaru. Now let's say if there are enemies of this fake Hikaru, they could want to kill everyone in association towards this fake Hikaru. Or if they're allies of this fake Hikaru, they might have taken on the forms of other people of this fake Hikaru as well. And they're kind of just like him. That's why the whole idea of those different characters, those different girls, might come into play. They might not be who they appear to be, and like all hive mind, they might know exactly what Hikaru is feeling at the moment. Or we could be dealing with a situation of Hikaru is seen as an obvious bad guy, but he's more like an obvious regulator in order to keep evil things at bay. But we don't know that for right now. We don't know that for right now, and it's only assumed that the true bad guy of the story is Hikaru himself, because the original Hikaru is dead, and this thing basically says to Yoshiki, I'm going to kill you if you tell anyone about who I am. So this is not a good thing, and this is not a good creature if he's willing to kill in order to preserve its existence of him being in this village. Now, why did this creature come down from the mountain all of a sudden and decide to inhabit the body of this person when it never did it in the past before? Very strange. But this is the story of the day Hikaru died. So moving on from that, we then see a cicada in episode 2, and the cicada is relevant towards the form of the story. We then see Yoshiki looking at Hikaru again through the first person view to look at him. And he's saying to himself, how long can I keep doing this? How long can I keep pretending that this is my actual friend? No one knows that the real Hikaru has been dead for quite some time. How long can I keep allowing this creature to pretend to be my best friend? Like it's actually really my friend and really wants to be my friend. How long can I continue to do this and it not affect me in the long run? Eventually, he comes across this woman at a supermarket. The woman grabs her hand and told him, listen, there's something not right about your friend. And I'm not sure if it's 100% your friend, but I know the aura that I'm feeling is coming from around you. And I know it's not you, then it must be your friend. So she doesn't, maybe she's a clairvoyant, maybe she just have, bad juju vibes and stuff. But whatever it is, basically Yoshiki decides to sleep on it and thought about it and decides to meet her the following day. It's also during this same episode of episode 2, Hikaru seemed to have made some black markings on his face to identify him so that he knows exactly where exactly where Yoshiki is. So it's kind of like a tag to state that
I'm imprinted on you as your friend, but I'm also tagging you to follow you to see where you're going, so I can know exactly where you are. So it's kind of weird that this creature wants to know exactly what he's doing at all times, even though he just wants to be his friend. So he goes back to Hikaru's original house to see Hikaru, fake Hikaru, who's sleeping in his room and stuff. And he looks at the picture of his actual real friend, Hikaru, from when he was a kid. And he's reminiscing on this. And in some ways, he's very angry because he realized, even though he knows that he's with this fake Hikaru, it's not the real him. So he decides to meet up with the woman, and the woman decides to tell him exactly what she thinks is actually going on. She explains to him that this thing might actually be an evil spirit, might decide to bring harm later on, and it might cause him problems later on. And in order to deal with it, you might have to separate yourself from this person before it actually leads to your death. Eventually, the following day at school, he decides to decides to stay in the room to think on the situation with Hikaru. And of course, in the background is the mountain, the dangerous mountain. So the ever looming threat is this mountain, whatever the hell going on in that mountain at the back. So eventually he tells Hikaru, the fake Hikaru, to take a hike, which breaks the fake Hikaru down in some ways. And eventually they have this like little heartwarming, perverted thing that's going on, which kind of kicked me out of the anime for a while. And then I came to my senses and I said, all right, hopefully it only happens once in this anime, because if it happens too many times, I might decide to remove it from this list. But it's a one-time thing. And eventually that same day, Hikaru runs away and decides to stay at his home. And during that night, I believe Yoshiki has another dream of Hikaru walking out of the forest, a type of head of a person with long black hair. Now, this could be foreshadowing for the future, but I don't know yet. But if it's anything related towards events that are going to be playing out in the future, this might be quite relevant and quite important to the development of future events. Now, for all I know, this head could be the head of someone who is present in the village at the very moment, or it could be the head of someone who's been dead for quite some time and been brought back to life, but they don't know it. I don't know what's going on in this anime so far, but we could be having a body snatcher thing situation here, but it could be a one shot, one deal type of thing where the good guy of the story is actually a fake Hikaru, and he's trying to keep all the monsters that are within the mountain at bay. I don't know yet, but at the moment, those were the three animes, or should I say, those were the three episodes of the day Hikaru died. Episode 1 was the intro of the character. Episode 2 was the intro of the woman talking to him with regards to meeting or dealing with certain things. Episode 3 had to do with him confronting fake Hikaru and telling him he don't want anything to do with him, and he believes that he might be a monster and it might be best for him to go back into the mountains, so on and so forth. And that's where I am so far with regards to this. So I haven't moved on to the fourth episode, but I believe that's all I need for right now. Now, typically I would have had a fourth anime to show on here, but I'm not going to have a fourth anime. So all in all, I would say out of all three of these animes, the one that seems to be more consistent with regards to a mystery is The Day Hikaru Died. The one that seems to be more consistent with regards to a type of lighter humor, but some scares at the same time, is Nube coming in second. Of course, Gachiakuta seems to be something that's more in line towards Hunter x Hunter slash My Hero Academia. Um, if that one survives, I'll be very surprised. I don't think it might survive in the long run because it seems in some ways, it seems kind of generic, but in some ways, it seems like its own thing. It all depends on the future of that anime. But the strong contenders with regards to moving forward in the future is going to be Hell Teacher Nube. And of course, I believe the number one will always be um, out of every anime I've seen that seems to be have a strong story or a strong mystery is going to be The Day Hikaru Died. It kind of reminds me of Stranger Things when Will disappeared in episode 1 and episode 2 and episode 3 they're trying to find out what happened to him. It feels like that. It feels like he disappeared and everyone's created a search party to look for Will from Stranger Things and they couldn't find him and one day they found him and they found out he's dead and stuff. You know, it feels like that. That's happening here in this anime. It gives that feeling of the supernatural and the dread, but in reverse towards fake Will being dead. We have fake Hikaru here being alive, that's fully a monster, that's threatened Yoshiki and say, "I'm going to kill you if you tell anyone that I'm pretending to be a human." So there's a monster in this town, and I'm just waiting for the anime to present how he's going to be outed by someone else because he's not going to be outed by Yoshiaki. So someone's going to discover his existence and it's not going to be pretty for whoever that person is. Let's say the exorcist gets killed. I could see that exorcist getting killed by Hikaru. But if that exorcist get killed by Hikaru, then the company who sent him will definitely know that there's something going on in this town, for which they would send tons of other exorcists to physically or assassins to deal with the situation. So I'm not worried about what happens to that exorcist with the burn mark on his neck that wears the glasses. What I'm concerned is this company, whoever they are, how they're going to deal with that situation if anything does happen to him. Because I know it's not going to be pretty for Hikaru. If they show up with guns blazing, all type of holy water type weapons and superpowers and stuff in order to deal with him, Hikaru is going to be killed, especially if it's more than one exorcist that's going to be showing up here. Let's say it's an entire group, an entire military group to deal with Hikaru. He's going to be dead. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but I believe the story is leaning towards trying to picture Hikaru as the evil villain here, and it might actually be the case that he is the villain because he straight up did tell Yoshiaki he's going to kill him. But it also is trying to show that Hikaru might not only be a villain, but he might also be a savior because his sole purpose is to contain what all type of craziness happens in that mountain, ghosts and spirits or whatever is in there. He's able to deal and contain it. So maybe he's the gatekeeper of whatever happens there. And because he's not there anymore, things go a little awry. So I'm not saying he's a good guy, but I'm saying maybe there's more than one logic going on here. More than one factor that's present here that I don't know yet. I'm only 3 episodes in, so I can't say for fully sure that he's 100% a bad guy. So that's it. That's the end of this anime for July 2025. You could watch this in August of 2025. I believe these 3 are the best ones so far. And of these 3, I believe 2 of them are the most interesting. Now, even if you don't like any of those 3, let's say, actually no, even if you don't like the last 2, but you do kind of like The Day Hikaru Died, that's fine. Because I only have 3 this time. 3 anime on my July list. So if you pick just one is fine. And I know one of them is going to succeed. I already know that The Day Hikaru Died is going to succeed. And it's going to have a long lasting story based on how it's presented. But I also know Hell Teacher Nube is going to last for quite a long time before it goes away. It might not last as long as The Day Hikaru Died, but it's going to go on for more than 1 season. I could tell. Depending on the story, because everything in Hell Teacher Nube has to be, or should I say, are stories tied towards a direction, and they are going towards a direction. And the stronger that direction gets, the stronger that connection is made. So it all depends on how that anime is presented, and how the quirkiness and the comedy is presented as well. So that's it for this. Come August, I'm not going to make an anime one. And in September, I'm not going to make an anime one for September either. So August and September, there's not going to be an anime video because in August, there aren't going to be many animes. And early September, there also aren't going to be many animes because July is when most of the animes were all dumped and presented, all the new ones anyway. And so you have July, August, and September are the periods for which evaluation goes to what's going to last and what's not going to last within Japan before they decide to even introduce new animes again, which are going to present it in late September, early October. So come October, that's when I'm going to do another anime. But for right now, this is the only one. Next time I'll do another anime, it's going to be October when like new animes are going to be released. And those new animes are going to be released in late September, early October. So that's the most logical time to do another new anime in early October. Or at least look at new anime in early October. So that's it for this video. I'm done. I believe the first one is if Netflix decide to run this, greenlight this, and run with this, then it's definitely worth watching. But I believe even though Hell Teacher Nube is not something that dependent on Netflix or it's not a Netflix original anime, it does have good, interesting qualities and fun aspects of it. But I believe for right now, the two contenders that are going to be in the long run, are going to last for quite some time, is going to be The Day Hikaru Died, which is heavily based on the mystery of what's going on and story developed, and Hell Teacher Nube. It all depends on what's going to be present in the future. I think I'm more interested in what's the mountains all about. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in exactly what Hikaru is. I'm more interested in where Hikaru came from, about this mountain. What's in this mountain? What's so special about this mountain? How do these creatures live in this mountain? Where did they come from? Where did he come from? This fake Hikaru, this thing. Where did it come? Did it just manifest? Is there a gate? Is there a gate that leads to hell? Is there like aliens that has alien tech? Did he come from space? We don't know what it is yet. We have no idea. We just know he came from the mountain. And we know it's eerie. We don't know what it is. This could just be some huge science experiment gone wrong by someone decided to do something. And all of a sudden, boom, shakalaka, we discover like this huge compound that's underground doing crazy experiments. Who knows what's going on? But this is the most mystery one that I'm interested to see in the long run. So that's it for this video. I'm done.